Okay. Alexandros Exarchou, Vice Chairman and Chief Executive of Intrakat. Do you want to introduce yourself and say something about Intrakat? And it's a very large infrastructure and construction company based in Greece, but would you say something about it, and then we can perhaps have a dialogue?
Well, I don't know if you can hear me, but...
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, oh, great. Well, Intrakat is one of the biggest companies in Greece, as most of you may know. We have serious, very big project in Cyprus, hence our interest for what's going on in Cyprus, and we have, as you know, a new management. I am the CEO of the new management and shareholder of Intrakat. Within the parameters of the change of management in Intrakat and our involvement in Cypriot projects, and of course, our interest for Cypriot projects, I think there are a lot of issues that concern Intrakat in Cyprus and, of course, in Greece. We have serious problems as well as opportunities here, and has my presence here.
Tell us about the problems.
Well, problems, yes. Well, they're not Cypriot problems by origin. You know, the construction sector, the last 10 years has suffered for various crises. Actually, we are during the third one. We started with, especially in Greece, Cyprus, and Southern Europe. 10 years now, we are in a huge financial crisis, which has caused significant losses for construction businesses all over Europe. I would say not Southern Europe, but especially Greece and Cyprus, I think, were very severely affected. I mean, the construction sector in Greece, as a result of that financial crisis, has been diminished significantly. There were periods of years and months, there were no projects at all, and therefore most of the companies either shrunk or were liquidated, or some very big companies like Lactor, Terna, and Intrakat suffered significant losses. Then, as soon as we managed to start believing that we do have some backlog in front of us, some new pipeline, and therefore hope for recovery, we have COVID, pandemic.
Yes.
And 2 years after the pandemic, as soon as we felt that we are now ready to go and we have significant opportunities ahead of us, here comes the war,
Yes.
which affected significantly, as you understand, the construction sector, mainly because of the unpredicted, unforeseen, unforeseeable, crazy increase of construction material prices. And if you can understand what's going on, the construction sector is a risk of the sector. We place an offer months or years before we are awarded the project. There is a method by which we can predict risk, but we cannot predict war, and especially a war like this. I mean, we are talking of a war somewhere in Northern Europe, Russia and Ukraine, far away from us, but the effect of such war, because it's an indirect war between Russia and European Union in practice, has significant effects in areas that they are not directly involved with the war, or the hostilities, let's call it like this. They are very much involved in the war, but not the hostilities. The financial result of it for construction companies like Intrakat, where, for instance, here in Cyprus, we have bid for a big serious project in Paphos. We bid it in 2019 at the prices at that time, with what we could predict or what could have been foreseeable at that time would have been very small inflation, the usual European inflation of euro, and now we are faced with a situation where we have significant inflation in Europe, totally unpredictable, totally unavoidable, let's say. And the legal system, both in Greece and Cyprus and a lot of European states, is such that prevent us from recovering, at least at ease or at good time, the difference in prices, hence very serious financial problems for all construction sector in Greece, Cyprus, and of course, I believe, in most of the European countries. In my opinion, this is an issue that needs to be handled at the European level rather than state level. And in Greece, we do have some attempts to ease the problem. It's not necessarily absolutely effective, but there are attempts. And I would say that it is absolutely necessary for Cyprus and the rest of Europe to tackle the problem. It would become, eventually, in my opinion, a very serious financial problem for most countries of the European Union, because the construction sector has a significant impact on the GBC of all countries. And if contractors suffer or start failing, the result will be significant for all economies of the European Union. It is a problem that needs and requires significant attention at the European level, European Union level, and of course, member states level.
And you're talking about energy particularly, or even raw materials as well?
I'm talking about construction material, yes. Energy is one issue. It is involved in increasing prices per se, but indirectly increase significant construction materials and the availability, of course, of some construction materials that originate from Ukraine or Russia. That is, again, a serious problem, but it's not the most important problem. The most important problem is the prices, which are affected by the energy crisis, and of course and the problem of transportation, because as a result of the energy crisis, transportation becomes very expensive, and therefore material becomes very expensive.
I mean, I suppose some people would say, well, this is a problem for all businesses. Why should construction be treated specially?
First of all, because the budget of construction projects is significant, and it's a risk that lies as a result of, I would say, legal systems all over the world. The risk of war lies with the states that are involved in the war, and eventually lie with the state that created the war or initiated the war. But it is totally unreasonable and outside the framework of any legal or understanding of the risk of construction to say that the contractor that is doing, in practice, it provides a service for the state. It's not the end user, it doesn't bill for itself, will suffer the result of an event such as a war, which is an event of force majeure. So therefore, it is practice, best international practice, that it is not for contractors to suffer the result of a war.
And do you have a sympathetic hearing from, I mean, you're talking particularly public sector construction Indeed. Projects. Do you have a sympathetic hearing from central governments, regional governments, other parts of the public sector that obviously their budgets are also under pressure, partly because of the war and the effect on Indeed. Energy prices and so on. So it's quite difficult for them to find more money. Indeed, in many countries, I would think they are actually reducing they're trying to reduce their spending.
They can reduce their spending for future projects that would have been understandable, but they cannot reduce the spending in relation to projects already awarded.
Yes.
And the problem here is what happens with awarded projects. I understand that they may slow down some future investments of theirs, but the problem is with what happens now of the projects that they were awarded before the war and we need to construct it during the war.
Right. Is one answer to slow down the construction process?
Slow down is
that happening anyway?
Slow down is one thing. Again, it's a significant risk for the contractor because the contractor has a contract and is obliged to perform per time, and not necessarily all awarding authorities understand to provide an extension of time, which would have been one of the solutions. I mean, in Greece, actually one of the measures taken by the Greek government was to allow later completion, so therefore to allow us to reduce the productivity rate, waiting for better days. Fine, that is a solution. But what I'm trying to say is measures like this are necessary. Member states need to enact them, and it would have been far better if these measures were imposed or at least recommended by European Union at that level, within the perimeters of measures taken to protect European Union from the war, or the war effects.
I mean, there has been, we've been hearing also here about the European Union Resilience and Recovery Fund, which was set up after the COVID impact, and there has been discussion in some countries of setting up something similar to deal with this sudden rise in the price of energy and the outcome of the war. But of course there are some countries in Europe that are reluctant to keep doing these sorts of things because there is a belief, I'm not sure it's correct, but there is a belief in some countries, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden and so on, that all this really means is that they have to pay for Southern Europe.
Yes, but now...
Do you hear that argument, and what do you think about it?
I've heard that argument for 10 years now. It's not a new one. What I say is that now Germany and all the states of the north understand what it means to suffer from an unexpected, unforeseen circumstance, which is the war. I understand that they are taking measures for themselves. We expect the same measures taken for COVID at that general level taken by COVID, which was a pandemic that affected all European states, the war to be treated on the same basis. And because the war has effects in Germany as well as in Cyprus, in Netherlands as well as in Greece.
And how do you tackle the environmental impact of construction as people get more and more concerned about climate change and CO2 emissions? Young people particularly worry about this. Construction, like shipping, like some other sectors, is quite a big contributor to this. Is there a way forward that you can do things in a more green way?
Of course there is. It currently
would cost
more.
Money.
And therefore it depends on the member states. We're talking about public works projects here, because the private sector, you can do various things to avoid risk and cost, and of course if the private sector wishes to pay more to be more green, no problem at all, otherwise you don't do it at all. But public projects, the states are obliged to do necessarily, both to boost the economy and because they have actual needs. It depends on the member states to enact towards what you suggest, which would have been great for us. I mean, the greener, the better, but the greener, the more expensive. And fine, we are delighted to do that if the member states, at again, European level, and then member states impose measures towards performing work in a more green fashion.
Yes. Now, I don't know how far your company spreads. I mean, you particularly mentioned Greece and Cyprus, but I think you're active through Southeastern Europe as well. Are you active in Turkey, for instance?
Turkey, you said?
No, no. I assume probably not.
No, not really.
Although, I mean...
It's a political risk that we would like to avoid for the moment.
And anywhere else in the East Mediterranean?
East Mediterranean, but we have projects in Romania and Northern Macedonia. We intend, of course, to increase our renewable energy sectors to the Balkans. For us, that is very important. We are investing more than 1.5 billion in constructing parks of 1.8 gigawatt of renewable energy. For us, renewable energy is the biggest bet for the future.
Okay. And transport links as well? Transportation in general?
Not for us. We're not involved in this for the moment.
Okay, right, okay. I mean, the big construction opportunity eventually may be to rebuild after the war. But I guess at the moment that's not on the cards. But there will be a lot of work that needs to be done if and when the war finishes, particularly in Ukraine.
It will be, the issue of COVID is that it created a lot of opportunities for public works projects, at least in Greece and some other European states. We are focused on that, and I think the significant amount of money that Greek state and other Southern Europe states will spend in terms of public works projects. Had we not had the war, we would have been in a very good shape.
Yes. Well, Greece, I mean, as we have been hearing here, both Greece and Cyprus have actually recovered quite strongly both from COVID now, but before that from the financial crisis. So, I mean, you're in a better place than in some countries.
Well, Greece is recovering.
Yes.
And to some extent, Greece had recovered. Still, we are hopeful that we are away from what happened a few years ago. We have a very good growth rate. Maintaining this and increasing it depends very much on sectors like construction. I know I'm becoming boring, but what Greece has, tourism, it goes great. I mean, this year was the best ever, and it has the backlog of construction projects in order to create some growth. It was a significant bet for Greece, and it was achieved. I'm afraid that as a result of the war, this may slow down, and that's a really pity because we suffered a really big financial crisis in order to end up having this opportunity, only to see it gone as a result of
Well,
a war far away from us.
There's going to be a recession next year, unfortunately, so the times are not very good. Anybody from the audience want to ask Mr. Exarchou about his experience and the future, the need for European help, or a more helpful attitude by public sector procurement agencies? Otherwise, the one other thing I wanted to ask you about was, you mentioned, in fact, right at the beginning that Intrakat has changed its business quite a lot recently. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about what drove that, and are you trying to slim down your cost base, or?
Well, Intrakat was an old-fashioned construction company in Greece, not unlike some others. We want to revitalize completely. We have the intention to recapitalize completely the business. We want to focus on issues and projects like PPC, renewable energy mainly. As I told you, we have a 1.5 billion investment plan for renewable energy, and we want to change the outlook of Intrakat. I mean, performing works at a loss. It was good business sometime, using the turnover, but eventually you suffer huge losses. We now clean the past. We paid for it. We're ready to recapitalize significantly Intrakat with a significant increase of share capital plus some additional borrowing investment, rather, for renewable energy. And as I told you, we have significant plans on renewable energy and concession projects. The old model of doing public works at a loss, we will avoid it. We will continue having a sector performing public works, but very selectively, making sure that we enter economies or countries that we can control the P&L.
Yes. And the recapitalization is taking place in Greece, is it?
Yes,
or,
in Greece.
On the Athens market?
Indeed.
And the management has changed?
Completely. The shareholding have changed. It was a buyout that took place in July.
Yes.
The shareholders are completely different now, and the management is utterly different.
Great. Well, good luck for the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.